Alrighty, everyone. Well, we are officially in Oscar season. We've been in Oscar season for a while, but the Oscars are just around the corner. So, later on in this podcast, we will be doing the official Access Blockbusters Pod's Oscar predictions for 2025. But before we do that, I thought it would be fun because this is the first year where I've really made an effort before the Oscars happen to watch all of the Oscar movies that I can. Usually I'll, see the Oscars and make some, general predictions or whatever, but not really confidently, and then just kind of go into the Oscar season and enjoy it. And then, after the fact, maybe I'll catch up on a few here and there. Usually a couple films that I'd seen are nominated for Oscars. And so, but this year is the first year that I really made an effort as the channel is continuing to grow. I thought it'd be a really fun thing to, yes, we are Access Blockbusters. We're here to talk about all the biggest movies, but the Oscars arguably are one of the biggest events in the movie world. And so a lot of these films you may not have seen, and that's okay. I'm one of those people who didn't really watch a lot of Oscar movies before. And again, you'll see from my rankings and my lists that my sensibilities are not the same as Oscar voters, are not the same as the general movie-going audience. We're all individual, unique people who have things that they like and they don't like, and that's totally fine. So, anyways, we'll do our official predictions in just a bit, but because I watched these movies, I wanted to do a ranking. I thought it'd be fun to just share my own thoughts on all these Oscar movies. So, what I have here is a list of 12 movies that I've seen that I would consider Oscar adjacent. 13 movies technically, but two of them I'm not going to rank. So, and I'll give a couple of reasons why in just a second. But 13 movies that I would consider Oscar adjacent. I guess 14. It's kind of nebulous, but the ranking itself will have 11 movies, and I'll explain the movies that I'm not ranking for a couple of reasons. But anyways, yes, so this will have 11 movies on this list, and you'll notice that 11 is more than 10 because 10 movies is the amount of Best Picture nominees. The reason is because some of these movies have prominent actors in acting categories that got nominated, or were nominated in other categories, but were not nominated in Best Picture. So I still tried to watch those movies as well, and I will admit, I didn't get to everything. I tried, I really tried, and I didn't get to everything. So before we get into my personal rankings of these films, I'm just going to call them Oscar films, I want to explain what's on the list and what's not on the list. So number one, a couple films that aren't on the list, The Wild Robot and Inside Out 2. They're Oscar nominated. They're animated films. They're Oscar nominated. We'll talk about animated films as we do our Oscar predictions, but they're not on this list just because I think they don't. I wanted to do live action films in this category. It's an arbitrary distinction, I know, but I just for the sake of my own consistency. So Inside Out 2 and The Wild Robot are not going to be on this list. Films that I did not get to see. I did not get to see Flow, unfortunately. Just not enough time. I do want to see it, but there is that. And unfortunately, I really did try. I guess another film I didn't get to watch is A Different Man, which got nominated for a couple other Oscars. But the one that I really wanted to try to see before, and I just couldn't, was I'm Still Here. I know that people in the comments have been, telling me, you got to see I'm Still Here. Fernanda Torres, she did a great job. I have no doubt that she did. I really have no doubt that she did. It's really hard in the United States for me to find it. It's all on pre-order right now, and it's really hard to find a platform where I can rent it and watch it. So unfortunately, just could not get around to watching I'm Still Here. But I did watch every single one of the other Oscar Best Picture nominees, and I also watched many of the other films that were nominated for acting categories. So we are going through these 11 films here, and I'm going to start at the bottom, and we're going to start at the top, and we're going to go to the top. And I just want to reiterate really quickly before we get into it, this is my personal list with my own personal sensibilities. I am not, going into it saying, oh, well, an X frame, an X scene, the exact immaculate nature of this picture and the color. No, it's just my list. It's what I like. It's my sensibilities. It's things that bother me, things that don't bother me in movies, and what I'm drawn to. And you'll see that going forward. So let's get it started here. Number 11, The Substance. And this is a film that your mileage is going to vary drastically. I am somebody who can admit full well the artistry and the message and the performances in The Substance and what it was going for. And I applaud it for going for that. This is not a movie for me at all. I could not watch half of it. I was covering my eyes. It was horrifying to me, and again, horrifying not in the way that it's terrible, it's cringy. No, it was just hard to look at for somebody like me who just hates body horror, hates medical things, all that kind of stuff. It was just hard to watch. So that's it. That's the only reason. The Substance, number 11. Number 10 is Emilia Perez, and I'm not here. I've said it before. I'm not here to go through all the drama that's going on here. I'm just talking about it as a movie, and as a movie, it's fine. It's okay. I think. Really, and this was well before all the drama with Carla Marie Gascon and all the stuff that's going on with Emilia Perez. And again, not here to talk about all that. But just as a movie on its own, I said this almost immediately after I finished watching the movie. This movie would have been maybe better if there was no music. And I'm not saying, well, I mean, there's the song that's become a meme. I'm sure you know what it is. But, I mean, in general, right, on balance, I don't think the music was distractingly bad in Emilia Perez. But every single time there was music, it was almost like Joker 2, where I was like, what? But why couldn't this have just been dialogue? Or why, some of these things were expressed, already. Like, there was that scene where Emilia Perez was talking to her son, and her son was like, oh, you smell like my dad. And the whole thing was like, oh, and there's this whole song about it. And I'm like, well, that was implicit, though. We know how the characters feel. So the movie's fine. It's whatever. It wasn't great in particular. It's whatever. And so I'm just putting it here at number 10. Coming at number 9 is Nickel Boys. Nickel Boys is a movie that I, again, applaud for the artistry. I think it's really unique with the first-person point of view. It's based on a book. The author of that book, who I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but he wrote another book called Harlem Shuffle that I read a while ago, and so I'm familiar with his work. And, I mean, I liked Nickel Boys. I think it was different, obviously, with the first-person switching point of view. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's about two African-American boys who are kind of sent to this institutional place that again, at the time, I think it's in the 70s. I want to say the 70s and is when this book takes place, or this movie takes place. Obviously not a great time. And so they learn to navigate this place, and they learn about the world and whether, to face the world with optimism or cynicism. And it's a good story. It is. It's just a little quiet and a little slow for me. And I think the first person point of view was good, but a little distracting towards the end. There is a twist at the end that I thought was well done, well executed, but again, at that point, I was like, yeah, this movie's okay. But again, I mean, at this point, these are really good movies, in my opinion, on balance at least. And so, the latter half of this list, I'm not, when I'm ranking them towards the bottom, these are Oscar movies. And again, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to love all of them, but it means that these are generally not, it's not like I'm ranking the worst of the year. So yeah, Nickel Boys, I liked it, but maybe not the movie for me. Number 8 is A Real Pain. Again, not a Best Picture nominee, but a film that has Oscar nominations all over, with Kieran Culkin and with Jesse Eisenberg with the screenplay. So A Real Pain, I thought was good. I think it was a little not all over the place, but I think a little bit slow as well, but not slow in the same way as Nickel Boys was, because I think Nickel Boys was more contemplative, but I think that A Real Pain, was just kind of like, and we're going along, and you see that there is a tension between these two main characters, and it culminates in a big speech at the end with Jesse Eisenberg. But I think that it's just a quieter film in terms of its scope, and it's just really about two characters that are just dealing with stuff, and I think there is a lot of merit to that. But I also think that, for me, just, I'm watching these two characters go through this, and I'm like, I can appreciate this a lot, but it's maybe just not the most engaging film for me personally. But I thought the writing was good, I thought the acting was good and everything, so appreciated the movie for that. Number 7 is Anora, and Anora is a film that, a lot of people have much higher on their list, and that's totally fine. I think that maybe it's because I knew to expect that this movie was just not going to be what people, what it was going to subvert my expectations, because I think a lot of the joy of the movie that a lot of critics got was that they thought they were going into a movie that was just a rom-com, right? It was, I met this Russian oligarch, and, he's going to take me in, and I'm going to get rich, and it's going to be a love story, and then there's going to be drama and whatnot. And it turned out to be very different, almost like a searching for this guy kind of movie with these with the henchmen. They're not henchmen, but the guards and whatnot. And there's a lot in here about socioeconomic class and status in society and whatnot. And so I think all of that is good. And I appreciate the movie, and it is entertaining, by the way. I think it got nominated for musical and comedy at the Golden Globes. I could be wrong. And people were like, is it a comedy? And out of this list, I will say I probably laughed the most in Anora, which I don't know if that's a reflection more on Anora or just the fact that Oscar movies are generally kind of sad movies. Because I laughed, I think, the most in Anora. I think there were a lot of funny moments and scenarios in there, obviously balancing the darker elements as well. And I think that it's solid. It's really solid. It's just maybe not my, cup of tea either. Like, it's not a film that I'm like, oh yeah, this is amazing, and all that kind of stuff. But I think a lot of other people appreciate it as well. And so I'm putting it at number 7. It's solid. It's very solid. Coming in at number 6 is A Complete Unknown. A Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan biopic, is really carried on the shoulders of Timothée Chalamet. He is just so great as Bob Dylan. It's amazing what he can do in terms of his voice, in terms of his acting and whatnot. Musical biopics are interesting because they all kind of start to blend together at a certain point. Tortured Artist pushes everyone away that he loves, and then he goes in pursuit of the art and stuff like that. And to be fair, this one is really well done. James Mangold, Logan, Ford v Ferrari, amazing. He's going to do Swamp Thing. He's going to do allegedly Dawn of the Jedi. So again, one of the great directors working today, and I think he did a great job. Really great job. This is an engaging movie about an artist who, again, is pursuing a dream that, a lot of other people, it's very countercultural in the 60s, with the kind of music that he wants to play, and he's at odds with Ed Norton, who I think Edward Norton, this is the best I've seen Edward Norton in a long time, and so I think that is really great as Pete Seeger, and so that is a really good thing. So yeah, this was a really entertaining movie, really, really well acted movie, really well directed movie, and there is that. Number 5, The Brutalist. I was stunned how engaged I was in a 3.5 hour movie. This movie, I will say, I think the first 2.5 hours are just humming, and you're engaged. There's tension, there's conflict, there's, it's a character study in this man, Laszlo, the architect, who is trying to live the American dream, but he's going through his own personal struggles, and there are things around him that are being pushed upon him, and other people around him that are, also trying to push their own views upon him. And it's a great story. I was so engaged with just this. It's such a simple concept of a guy building something, like an architect. But I was stunned at how engaged I was in the whole movie. And for those of you who have seen the movie, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. In the last 45 minutes or so, something happens that I think just makes the film immensely dark. And I was not a fan of that, because, again, I'm not saying films should not have dark subject material. I think by the 2 hour and 45 minute mark, the point has been made. I think that this guy is going through a lot, and he is struggling with a lot. And yeah, I mean, this moment at the end really propels him towards deterioration, mentally and physically and emotionally. But I think that it just kind of took the movie and shifted it to a level where I just was not expecting, and I frankly did not enjoy, because it was just so heavy. And so I think that really kind of, bumps it down a couple notches for me. But again, I mean, for the most part, it's beautifully shot. It is so well acted. Adrian Brody, fantastic. Felicity Jones, fantastic. It's great. The directing, Brady Corbet, great. And yeah, I mean, I just have very, few bad things to say, other than maybe the last little chunk of time there. So number 5, The Brutalist. Number 4 is Conclave. Conclave I talked about in my Best of 2024 video segment. And you'll notice a lot of these films I watched in January 2025. That's why they're not on my Best of 2024 list. So unfortunately, just couldn't get around to watching them before making that list. But Conclave was one of those films that came out in November, I believe, and so I went to see it, and I loved it. Political, and not capital P political, although it is sort of capital P political, but also political in terms of the espionage kind of going on in the voting for the new pope, and the vote getting, and the corruption and power and faith and religion, and a great character with Ralph Fiennes being the guy who's trying to hold it all together. Stanley Tucci is there, John Lithgow. It's great. Isabella Rossellini as well. It's fantastic. I love this movie, and this is, I think these 4 films are the next 4 films are films I just outright loved. I love these 4 films. Coming in at number 3, Dune Part 2. Dune Part 2 is awesome. I mean, it's just awesome. And again, maybe the one knock I have for this film is just it doesn't feel complete. Like, if Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2 were somehow smushed together into a 6-hour epic, that might have been one of the most epic, best movies I'd ever seen. But, as it stands, Dune Part 2, it feels like very much a continuation of Dune Part 1, and that's fine. That's good, because it's fantastic. The visual, breathtaking nature of it, the mythology, the way that Timothée Chalamet elevates himself to be, the Lisan al-Gaib, right, from Paul Atreides. It is awesome, and the hand-to-hand combat, the Bene Gesserit, the Fremen, everything about this movie, it's so well executed, and I love it. So Dune Part 2 coming in at number 3. Now, there are 2 spots left, and you might be looking at a list of Oscar movies and going, well, I know one of them, and obviously you know one of them. But the other one might be surprising to you, and this is really a film that speaks to my own sensibilities. There are a couple films every year, because you can tell, I don't love every single Oscar movie that comes out every year, and nor should everyone, I think. I mean, I'd love for everyone to love every single movie that they watch, but I think, if you loved every single Oscar movie that ever came out every single year, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's just who you are, but for me, I just can't fathom that world, because we love different things. We all enjoy different things. And some movies speak to me differently, on a deeper level. La La Land is one of them, right? La La Land became one of my favorite movies of all time when that came out. This past year, I got to see a film that was nominated for 2024, I believe, Past Lives. That was about a year ago it got nominated. That's a movie that spoke to me so deeply. I loved Past Lives. It became one of my favorite movies of 2023 that came out that year. Loved that movie. And number 2 is a movie that wasn't even nominated for Best Picture. And I'm kind of stunned. It wasn't nominated for Best Picture. Number 2 is Sing Sing. Sing Sing is a movie that I watched it and I go, sure, maybe this is a movie that just speaks to me more than most people in terms of I love movies that are hopeful. I love movies that dig deep and cut deep, but at the end of the movie, there is something to hope for, right? That's why, we won't go into this too much in this episode, but I watched Parasite, and yeah, I can appreciate the artistry and stuff like that, but Parasite to me felt very much like The Substance, in which I felt so disgusting at the end of Parasite because of just the message and what it was trying to say about people, and I just felt gross, and it's just not a movie for me. Sing Sing is the opposite. Sing Sing is a movie that has such hope and optimism and joy and goodness. And it's about the goodness of people, ultimately. And I loved that movie. It's so different, obviously, from a Dune Part 2 and from the movie that's at number 1 still. But it's a movie that Coleman Domingo pours his heart out into. And we'll talk about my predictions for Best Actor. But, needless to say, I think his performance is fantastic. But at the end of the day, I watched this movie and I came out of it and I went, wow. It makes me feel better about being a human being. And it's told through the lens of this theater production, and it's not a very long movie, and ultimately the story itself is not too complicated. You can kind of see where it's going, but I think it's still a movie that spoke to me so deeply, and I loved it. I love this movie. So number 2 is Sing Sing, and I'm a little sad it didn't get nominated for Best Picture, honestly. But number 1, and it remains number 1, is Wicked. Wicked, and it's hard to explain for me. I'm somebody who grew up as playing musical instruments. I grew up, with music as a big part of my life. And it's hard for me to explain, but it just happens. I've seen Wicked twice now, and both times. It's not just a first time thing. It's not even what the words are expressing. It's just hearing the orchestral notes, hearing Cynthia Erivo not even sing words, just sing, And at the end, obviously, the orchestral notes are swelling, and the last 5 minutes, and there are just tears that are coming to my eyes. And it's not even emotional in that way. Like, it's not like the Inside Out 2 scene about anxiety where that makes me cry because, it's beautiful. But this is beautiful in a different way. This is beauty in a different way. I acknowledge that for me, this has a leg up because it's a musical and it's able to tap into that for me, that other side of me, the music side of me. On top of that, I think the movie itself is just fantastic. The character work, it's great, the production, the costumes, but the music and the story and Cynthia Erivo, Ariana Grande, everyone is great in the movie. And this is just a movie that I watch it, and from beginning to end, I go, this is what is beautiful about art to me. And I know that, it's a big movie. It made over $700 million. And, how dare we crown a Best Picture winner that is also a big movie? And it's not going to win Best Picture. It's just not. But for me, I stand here and I say this is the best movie to me that I watched last year, maybe with the exception of Inside Out. And even then, I said Inside Out 2 was my favorite movie of 2024. I wake up every day, because I rewatched Wicked a couple weeks ago. I wake up every day and I just go, man, it could flip. Like, you ask me in 2 years what my favorite movie of 2024 is, and I might tell you Inside Out one day, and then the next day I might tell you Wicked. So it's just that good, in my opinion. So that is my list of the Oscar movies. Actually, I should mention, there is one movie that I also watched that I'm not going to rank here, and that is The Apprentice. I should have mentioned this up front. It's not me trying to hide it. I totally forgot. I should have mentioned this up front. But I also watched The Apprentice because, Sebastian Stan and Jeremy Strong are nominated, and I'm just not going to rank it because I think obvious reasons I'm not going to rank it. I will tell you, though, I'm not afraid to tell you, I like the movie. I thought it was a good movie, and I think Sebastian Stan and Jeremy Strong gave great performances, so yeah, I like the movie. But it just doesn't feel like, it's a good place for my channel to be ranking a movie like that. So anyways, there is that. Guys, that is my ranking of all the Oscar movies. Let me know what your ranking of all these Oscar movies and the other ones that you might have seen are in the comments down below.